if you keep watching, you're going to see that things do tend to even out. I mean, look there, we got a pretty fully functional Trinity in action right there. That is a lot of extra damage, up to 70% more damage on top of gain 70% additional damage, which is... Alright guys, what's up? It's New. Welcome back. We have a follow-up video on one I made a few days ago about how you can gain up to 70% extra elemental damage on account of adding Innervate and Ice Bite to a Herald of Thunder link using some interesting support gems, reverse ailment tech stuff. And I got such great feedback on that video, I realized I needed to make a follow-up because apparently I massively over-delivered and undersold that tech for some other things, some other reasons. There were basically three things, three different types of feedback that I got, one of which is really the catalyst for this video. First of all, not everybody's playing Lightning Spear. I targeted Lightning Spear players because I thought, you know, well, we'll get some extra eyeballs on this. But no, some of you thought I was selling you a little short. All of you Galvanic Shard and Lightning Arrow builds out there, shout out to you. So you informed me that it was something that was definitely for you guys as well. So that's nice. A little bit more important, though, is the fact that you can actually use two separate Herald links to reverse ailment tech, and you can still get a lot of value out of that. And some of you mentioned the coming calamity, which we'll take a look at here in a second. And so that is something I probably should have mentioned because you can, you know, just take what I showed you a step further and get even more value out of it, potentially. And the third thing, which we're really making the video for, is Trinity. So I don't have really any experience using Trinity because I'm running a Twister build that's like 2/3 physical damage. Now, I've used Trinity support in PoE1. I mean, it's one of my favorite supports. Super powerful in that game. Apparently, it's really powerful in this game too, but works a little differently. And apparently, most, or I guess maybe not most, but a lot of the Lightning Spear users and other attack-based users are using Trinity for their elemental builds and not getting a whole lot of value out of it. But what I showed you guys in that video, which is linked in the description if you want to see the whole thing there, I basically unlocked additional support, effective support or utilization out for Trinity, which is a spirit gem this time around. Cost 100 spirit, very expensive, and again, functions a little differently. We're going to take a look at that. And as you can see from the very front of this video, well, I'm going to give you even more damage today. So I'm just kind of showing some of these comments in the background. I've got a big kick out of these. You know, they're not all positive, but you know, a lot of you guys giving me some great feedback, so I really appreciate it. Just figured I'd do a shout out for you guys on that. So I know you guys are going to be very excited to see how you can get even more damage in the build. But first, let's just talk about the coming calamity. This is a chest that a lot of people have asked me if I'm ever going to use. I have thought about using it. It's been very high on my radar for quite some time. There's some issues, though, in that it has 0 energy shield. If you're trying to pump up your energy shield as a defensive layer, it's not very good for this chest. It also has no spirit, but you get 3 triple heralds. So that doesn't really cost any spirit. And you get the free gem slot. And I think if you need the gem slots in particular, this is very valuable. Because actually for a body armor, you can already roll a lot of spirit, up to 61 spirit anyway. But these heralds roll up to level 19, and so you're kind of gifted them for free. And you can do a lot with these heralds, especially Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder, using that reverse ailment tech that I mentioned before to make a higher functionality for your build. More quality of life, working in Trinity, evidently, as we're going to see. And in this video, I am showcasing Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder this time to help unlock Trinity's true potential. So the coming calamity is going to be especially a strong chest for the options of what I'm doing, although in the showcase that I'm showing, I'm not running it. I'm simply just running it the hard way, 2 separate heralds. Now we have Trinity, and I have it right here in front of me. And PoE2DB site is, by the way, that's what I'm using here. And we got to talk about this because it's going to confuse some of you who maybe have not looked into it. I mean, I hadn't looked into it, so I just kind of, you know, I was using my PoE1 brain, as it were, to assume how I knew how it worked. There are some similarities, but it does work a little bit different at the same time. At a glance, it seems to be the same. So in PoE1, Trinity is a support gem. In PoE2, it's a spirit gem. It's 100 spirits, so it costs a lot, but you get your support link back. Now in PoE1, you get resonances for all 3 elements, fire, lightning, and cold. And whenever you do an attack with that link, because again, it's a support gem, not global damage, but just in that link, you are granted resonance of the opposing 2 elements that you didn't use or were lower on the scale. And the goal is to try to embed in that one ability at least 2 elements that have the opportunity to be at the top end of the damage. Usually it features lightning because it's like a low minimum roll and a high max roll, and then either cold or fire is the second element. That's how it normally works, and you get a huge damage boost in that link for that. Now, in PoE2, it's a spirit gem and works for all damage. Anything from a cast on crit link to infused weapon for the Amazon to the Herald to your lightning spear link to anything you can possibly think of. If it's doing elemental damage and hitting anything, it is going to grant resonance, except it doesn't grant it for the opposing elements. In this game, it grants it for the element it actually does. So that's nice. It's more straightforward. A little less confusing in that case, but it's harder to manage also because instead of granting 2 resonances out of 3, it's granting only 1, the one for the element that you topped out at. And then also, instead of just kind of letting the other resonances decay, it actually brings them down. So you can't just over prioritize one particular element or it will drive the resonances of the other ones down. So the goal is to do top end elemental damage across all 3 elements fairly evenly handed, so that the total resonance level can stay pretty high. Gain 13 resonance when you hit the element that you're trying to hit, and then lose 3 of the other 2. So in order to keep those numbers really high, you have to be shuffling between all 3 elements, either super quickly on all 3, or mediocre pace, or slowly. The pacing has to be fairly even. So it may be a little hard to understand, but we're going to take a look at some game footage here in a second. Now, the interesting thing about Trinity, as we're going to scroll down, is that it benefits greatly off of increased levels. Okay, 1% more elemental damage with attacks per 30 resonance type caps out at 100 resonance per element. So that would be, yeah, at 6%, that'd be up to 60% more damage if you were to have 300 resonance, and you get benefit also with increased attack speed. Doesn't matter that much for Lightning Spear, but it's nice if you're running high resonance on all 3 effectively. Now, if we scroll down here, we will see that at level 20, it is 6, okay? So you want a level 20 gem. But at level 23, it's 7%. You also get a bonus here with an increased amount of resonance you gain on hit. But the 7% more damage multiplier, that's a big boost. And to get that, it's pretty easy. You just use a level 20 gem and you use all 3 mastery supports. So that's going to be the link. It's Trinity plus Fire Mastery, Cold Mastery, Lightning Mastery, and then you get the 7%. And that's up to 70% more damage, on top of gain up to 70% increased damage. Or extra damage, I should say. Gotta be careful with my words on that. Yeah, they're 2 totally separate multipliers in this case. Alright, now the people who were most interested in Trinity were already running the Sacred Flame. I also point out that I'm running a very high flat fire damage ring. I had to do that. I tested all of what I'm about to show you here across about 2 hours. It was definitely a bit of a mental stretch to get it to work as well as I did, but I think you're going to find we have a very high functioning Trinity in the end. I'm running through all the links here, and actually let's rewind the tape. Let's talk about it a little more slowly here. Infused Weapon gets a little bit of an honorable mention. It's not playing a super important role, but a lot of people were asking about Electrocute. Snoop, how do you get your frenzy charges? You're not electrocuting in your Herald of Thunder anymore. Well, if you freeze, it's all the same, isn't it? But it's nice on the Amazon, at least, not the Deadeye, but the Amazon gets Infused Weapon, and so when you shoot out that Lightning Spear, you're potentially going to, well, you're going to soak up a frenzy charge, and that's pure lightning infused weapon, and so you might actually electrocute an enemy at the same time, so might as well just take advantage of that. If nothing else, you get some value out of having an extra elemental ailment on the enemy, you know, for something like, well, not Rising Tempest, but anyway, I think there's a support that deals with that. Forgetting off the top of my head. But yeah, just some simple links there for that. Nothing super important. This is the least important link of them all. And so Herald of Thunder is going to look a little different this time. Okay, it still has Innervate, just like before. It has Ice Bite, just like before. Okay, and then it has Glaciation to help with the freeze. And then it's got Embitter, okay? Remember, Embitter with Sacred Flame grants me 60% gain, 60% as extra, well, up to, if it's perfectly rolled Sacred Flame, not corrupted. 60% as extra cold, not fire, instead, as well as transforming Innervate into Cold 2 and Immolate, which I had before, but this time I'm going with Reach instead of Immolate. Reach is still going to be good here. There's no downside and get some extra AoE range on Herald of Thunder. The reason I'm not putting Immolate here for even more cold damage is, well, A, it's a little bit overkill, but B, we are going to be adding in Herald of Ice. Okay, Herald of Ice with Herald of Thunder. That's going to be fun for some of you. And here we're going to be trying to pump up fire damage as hard as we can. Get fire infusion. Immolate is going to be here. Wildfire. All right, these aren't nearly as important, but just to try to get extra, just any extra fire hits that we possibly can. Notice Herald of Ash is not in play because it's not fire hits, so it doesn't really seem to have any benefit at all. I decided to give both Heralds AoE. We got Fiery Death, you know, again, trying to proliferate, ignites too, to, you know, doing more damage to immolate, that sort of thing. Lightning Spear is still the same links, Perpetual Charge, Volt, Long Shot. Then we have Fork and Deliberation. All right, and then we have Trinity, like I mentioned before earlier in the video. We have Fire Mastery, Lightning Mastery, and Cold Mastery because we're running level 23 Trinity. All right, so let's see how this functions here. We have Trinity at the top bar, but we don't see the sort of resonance icon yet. We need to hit something first. Yes, I also show you the breakdown, so it's important to see that. We're going to look into these numbers a little more closely, but you can kind of take a glance here and see how some of the numbers break down. It's super, super important to understand in real time what's happening with the numbers because the numbers that you do the highest matters greatly. All right, so the very first hit that goes out, you can see at the top here, it got some lightning, but primarily fire. So it did primarily fire damage. The very next hit, suddenly the fire is gone, and lightning and ice are at the very top, or cold rather. And that's because the Herald just went bananas in that moment. So the Herald goes bananas. There's no fire involved in the Herald, but the Herald is kind of split between cold and lightning, and that's what's going on in that case. Now the trick here with this setup is trying to get Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder to, shall we say, communicate with each other on a fairly even basis. If they do, that means the resonances will be shared fairly evenly, because again, Herald of Ice is like almost exclusively fire, whereas Herald of Thunder is split basically two ways. If anything favors cold, and then Lightning Spear favors lightning as well. So kind of got an even spread, but you can see here that there's something. We're working with something here right there. The resonances are pretty high. Up next, we have a breach, and there you go. You see the resonances kind of shaking out, but they go a little bit back and forth, a little bit this way, but if you keep watching, you're going to see that things do tend to even out. I mean, look there. We got a pretty fully functional Trinity in action right there. That is a lot of extra damage, up to 70% more damage on top of gain 70% additional damage, which is damage on damage. Who doesn't like that? Now, some of you did say, what does it really matter? You need more damage. The game's so easy anyway. Well, I guess you guys aren't playing 100% deli, monsters take reduced damage from crits, more monster life maps, because, you know, I sometimes run those maps, and having more damage is always kind of nice. Also, some of you were running into an issue with not getting Innervate. You see I have Ice Bite and Innervate still up, pretty high uptime. If you're not getting Innervate, but you're getting Ice Bite, it's because you're actually one-shotting enemies with Lightning Spear. And that doesn't work because you need the Herald and Lightning Spear to communicate with each other, because the Lightning Spear shocks is the only thing that's really shocking, and then the Herald is supposed to finish off the shocked enemy. But if the Lightning Spear kills off every single enemy that it touches, then the Herald goes off on other enemies that are full life. It will freeze them, and you'll get Ice Bite, but you won't get Innervate. Conversely, if you're getting Innervate but not Ice Bite, it means you're not doing enough damage, or you're doing content that's too hard, or your gear is too bad, or something to that effect. So there should be a middle ground. If you're anywhere in that middle threshold, you will be seeing both buffs like I do here. My damage is pretty high, of course. You can see in the numbers there. And, you know, I should mention, I don't have the numbers on the right here, so you can't see the type of map. But this map, I believe it had a more monster life roll, and it was like 60% delirious. So that's why everything kind of shakes out pretty well for me. If you're super well geared, then do harder content. I mean, that's basically the moral of the story. But we end the video there. You can see Trinity. I let Trinity roll so you can kind of see where it's at. And that's got to get some of you guys excited, I know, because, I mean, many of you guys were voicing extreme excitement just for unlocking 2 resonances as opposed to 1. And I got to think, well, wait, what? It can't be that great if you're just getting 2 instead of 1. You guys mean you're using a 100 spirit cost thing just to get up to 20% more damage? And now you get 40% more damage? You're like, yes, oh my god, yeah, so much damage. And then you're just leaving another 20% on the table? Okay, well, anyway, I wanted to try and give you guys something a little bit better. Hopefully, this works out for you. Again, a lot of testing, and it's going to depend on your build. And I did mention a second ago that I had a huge flat fire roll on there. I actually bought that ring. I went out of my way to buy that ring just for this test, thinking that It was like 1 divine ring or whatever. But I was like, man, I'm having a hard time getting fire to come up top. And the reason I know that is because I started opening PoB to see where all my damage was and what was coming from when it was fully buffed. And that's what we're going to finish this video on, so we can see the real breakdown on it to help you better understand what's actually going on under the hood of Trinity, at least with the build and the gear that I have. By the way, this build is going to be linked in a path of building in the description of the video this time. I went ahead and you know, populated it up so you could have it. It's not a guide, but it's there for your inspiration if you like. All right, I bring you to Path of Building. This is a separate program, and you can click the link in the description. It'll bring it up on max roll, but it won't, for some reason, populate the passive tree. So here's the passive tree if you don't see it. It's right here. And by the way, I did try to fit in a fire skill and cast on crit. Nothing can seem to outpace Lightning Spear or Herald anyway. So like even when I put Fireball or any of the fire, there's like 7 different fire skills. None of them actually shoot out fast enough to hit anything before they die. So it's kind of a moot point there. But I have the gear here. This is just the gear that I've been running on my regular build. And then what is important to look at here is the calculations. So we're going to look at a few skills here. We're going to see these numbers. These are going to be the very important numbers. It's important you understand this because this is how you will be able to manipulate your own build to make Trinity function more highly. All right, so first of all, you'll see that Lightning Spear is primarily lightning. It's still doing a lot of fire, though. The reason it's doing a lot of fire is because of Sacred Flame. Okay, Sacred Flame's huge fire roll, right? And it's even doing some cold. The reason it's doing some cold is because, like unusual, I actually populated it with Innervate and Ice Bite. So if we remove those, we'll see that suddenly that Sacred Flame fire roll is competing with the lightning, right? But I show you this. It's important to understand if you're anticipating those buffs to be up. Well, now you see that Trinity is never going to benefit from fire on the main Lightning Spear attack. And that attack is actually very infrequent for Trinity anyway. So I kind of bring this, I point all of this out to show you that actually what's going on with Lightning Spear isn't all that important, to be honest. Now we move down and we move to one that's a lot more important here. And with the Ice Bite and Innervate buffs up, we'll see that Herald of Ice with Fire Infusion is still trying to compete as hard as it can on cold. But this is the big reason why I bought that flat fire ring, because if I remove that, then suddenly cold is competing a lot more with the Herald of Ice, and fire has less of a chance to come out on top for the resonance proc, and I really need it to on Herald of Ice, as Herald of Ice seems to lose out against Herald of Thunder anyway in terms of speed and proc rate. So it's very important that we do that. Now lightning is still there because of Innervate, some lightning damage, but it will never be on top. And so fire is on top mostly here, and that is especially true if the enemy is ignited. Okay, now if the enemy is ignited, the math on this all changes a little bit. All right, so Herald of Ice is where Immolate is, and so that's why it's almost always going to win Ignite. Herald of Thunder is where some interesting things happen here, and unfortunately PoB is not properly updated here. So you'll see that cold is very low and fire is high. That is because the program has not yet been updated so as to check for embitter. You'll see it's written in red here. That means it's not functioning in the app. So when that functions, actually I had this populated on purpose right here. So with the numbers that I had, that would be an extra 92% as cold, and you can see it looks more like this. Actually, I need to reduce the amount of lightning too because it's removing Innervate from lightning effectively. But you will have seen in the footage that lightning and cold are in absolute competition with one another, and that's why with the setup that lightning and cold were like just constantly proccing, sitting at top, unless something happened where I got like this huge fire hit off of like Herald of Ice, and that like took over in some cases. Again, you know, there's a lot of this going on here, right? But generally speaking, especially if your fire is not high, then you will have a very reliable lightning and cold resonances, and that will still be over 40% more damage. But I really wanted to, you know, put Trinity on a pedestal here because, again, the feedback, so many, like at least like 10 of you mentioned it in passing about Trinity, and some of you were like super hype about it, and the fact that I didn't even talk about it in the video was kind of blew everybody's mind for those of you who were in the know and already using Trinity. So we needed to readdress that. Now we've sold the tech properly, I think, with everything taken into account. But again, I'm not playing this build, so I'm not going out of my way to make a full-blown build guide. I know some of you are going to ask that. I don't know, maybe in the future, but I'm neck deep in Twister gameplay, loving it, absolutely loving it. And you can check that build guide out if you want. That will also be in the description. But anyway, this is just me doing a fun little test, trying to help out the community, getting you guys hype about how to improve your build. You can play whatever build you want. If you're hype about playing your build, that's great. That's the best thing. Because PoE2 is a good game, right? All right, all kidding aside, we are done with this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.